All right, welcome back to Burt's Basics. My name is Peter Burt. I teach at Box Elder High School. I'm glad you're here. Today we're starting the nervous system. So today we're doing Strand 7, Standard 1 and 2, which is the functions of the nervous system and the organization of the nervous system. So once again, looks like a lot, but don't worry about it. This is the one we're going to focus on mostly, Standard 2. So let's start with Standard 1, the general functions. I know this is really simple, and we're going to complicate like crap out of it. So if you just remember, there are three major parts of the nervous system. There's sensory coming in. There's integration, which is your processing, memory, how you're going to take care of that. And then there's also your motor, which is your output to go to muscles as you go. Now we're going to do more stuff like this. So I know this looks a little bit more scary, but I need you guys to know the types of neurons that are found in the nervous system. So let's start with this one. Sensory neurons, we're going to talk about different types and strategies, different kind of groupings. There's some for heat, there's some for pain, there's some for pressure, okay, there's some for chemicals. There's lots of types of sensory neurons, but the nice thing is sensory neurons always gather information, send it to the brain and spine. That sounds okay? Okay, the next neuron we got to talk about is interneurons are the ones that are going to do the integration. They're between, they take all the sensory information, they create a plan or a process to create a response. And then my favorite, motor's the one that's going to go out to effectors. Now effectors is kind of a scary term, but effectors is nothing more than a muscle or a gland or anything you're going to do to fix the sensory problem that's generally coming in. And there's different types of feedback. If you remember from map A, we talked about positive feedback, we talked about negative feedback. These are our three main parts. So I hope you guys are feeling pretty good about these. Right there, sensory integration motor, not a big deal. Now, let's talk about organization of the nervous system. This one's a lot more tricky. So in my mind, I see that we are organized into 7 different nervous systems. Now we can argue there might not be 7, but I'm going to argue there's 7. So what we're going to now do is we're going to talk about them all. The nervous system, when I say nervous system, that's all encompassing. That's everything that we're going to talk about here. So nervous system is kind of a very broad term. So what we're going to do is we're going to tell a story and we're going to put all the nervous systems together. Starting with the most scariest creature on the planet, E.T. Okay, I don't know if you're watching this at home or not. I'm sorry if you scream, sorry if you're crying, but it is by far the scariest creature in the world. So let's go ahead and do a story. E.T. is trying to touch you with his freaky finger. He's like, telephone, he's like, phone home. Okay, and he's trying to, grab you. Scary E.T. So the first thing you have to know is you got to know your nervous systems. So there is a central nervous system, which includes the brain and spine. And then there's the peripheral nervous system, which includes everything else. Now, I've taught a long time, and I always say CNS, but I really don't say PNS because it sounds like a male reproductive organ. So I'm going to call them central nervous system and peripheral nervous system. Just remember, peripheral is everything off to the side. That's why they call it your peripheral nervous system. So the nerves in your arms are peripheral, the nerves in your legs are peripheral, but the nerves in your brain and spine are central. So when ET tries to reach out and grab you, the first thing we're going to do is start in the peripheral nervous system. And we're going to start with your eyeball. The eyeball is going to see ET, it's going to send it on a nerve. This would be a sensory nerve. Okay, it's called the optic nerve. And it's going to send it to your brain saying, this creepy alien guy is trying to grab you. Okay, and then the nerves in the peripheral nervous system will shoot towards the brain and spine. Now, in class, we are going to talk a little bit about these. There are 12 pairs of nerves going into your brain. They're called cranial nerves. And if you look at number 2 over here, that one is your eye. So I know it's kind of crazy to think, but there's only 12 pairs of nerves coming out of your brain and spine. And most of them are coming out of your brain stem. That's why your brain stem has so many cool functions. So if you kind of look at this chart, it kind of tells you what those are. Now, you don't need to know their names, so don't panic, but you do need to know there are 12 pairs of cranial nerves coming out of the cranium, helmet, or the brain. Same thing with the spine. In the spine, you have lots of nerves coming out there as well, okay? And this one, we have 31 pairs of spinal nerves. So if I can go back really quick, you just saw ET. So if we look, the ET is going to send a signal in on the sensory peripheral nerve into the brain. Stop right here. Now we are in the central nervous system, because remember, central nervous system is your brain and spine. That's when, if we go back, now we're going to go to integration. Okay, you saw ET, sensory neuron, send it to the brain, integration. You got to figure out what to do now. Okay, like, do you slap them? Do you punch them? Okay, what are you going to do? So remember these numbers for these guys. This is also good for EMTs if you're going to approach a car crash and someone is having, like their abdominal muscles are not working. Well, if their abdominal muscles are not working, then you know that the damage or swollen area is probably down here in the lower thoracic region because those are the ones over your abdominal muscles. Okay, this is where we talk about quadriplegic, paraplegic, depending on where you get injured on the spinal cord. Okay, we'll talk about those more in detail later. So the brain has now got it. The brain is your central nervous system. It's integrating. It's like, okay, ET, scary. What are we going to do? Now it has to send a signal out on the motor. Now the motor neuron, okay, they're going to send a signal. This is your central nervous system. The motor is going to go out and it's going to go to an effector. Now in this case, it's talking about a muscle. Okay, a muscle to kick ET, to run away from ET. Okay, do anything you need. But it's a little more tricky than that. Okay, if you look at your motor neuron response, look at all these other nervous systems coming out of your motor neuron. Now, this is the one that most people are familiar with. It's called the somatic, nervous system. The somatic nervous system is your voluntary skeletal muscles. Kicking, punching, screaming, biting, slapping, hitting, pulling ET's hair. Okay, I don't think ET does not have hair, but that would be all somatic. At the same time, your brain can also send stuff on the autonomic pathway. Now, autonomic should scream at you automatic. So let's zoom in on that a little bit more. If we look at the autonomic, it controls involuntary responses. So if you guys are taking notes, somatic is voluntary or skeletal muscles. Autonomic then would be smooth and cardiac muscles, the ones you can't control. And it depends on what it does. So if ET's chasing you, do you want to rest and digest, or do you want to fight or flight? Well, obviously, we want to run away from ET, so as we run away from ET, we are in the complete, wrong way, sympathetic nervous system. So now let's talk about sympathetic nervous system here really quick. If you're like doing this, I should pause you, but you won't do it. Pause at home. This is all fight or flight. Now, everything's fighting, punching, biting, screaming, but you know that's up in the somatic nervous system. This is all involuntary. So fight or flight is heart rate booming, breathing up, eyes whoop, dilating, sweating, shooting through the roof. These are all things you cannot control. Basically, the sympathetic nervous system, or fight or flight, makes the somatic nervous system run at maximum efficiency. If your muscles are scared, man, they need oxygen, they need blood, they need heat regulation so you don't overheat. I mean, this is basically, these go hand in hand. You can do somatic and sympathetic at the same time. You can do somatic and parasympathetic at the same time, but you cannot do sympathetic and parasympathetic at the same time. These two are opposite. Now, in class, everyone says, well, Bert, you didn't teach parasympathetic. Oh, yeah, I did. I just taught you sympathetic. So if you know sympathetic is eyes dilating, sweating, increased blood flow, increased heart rate, increased respiration rate, well, then parasympathetic is the exact opposite. So in parasympathetic, your heart rate goes down. Your eyes constrict. Your breathing rate goes down. Your blood pressure goes down. You have a blood shift that actually shifts the blood to your internal organs for digestion. This is why you cannot eat a big meal and then all of a sudden go play sports. It's a hard transition between one and the two. You're not going to do very well. So let's go through our 7 nervous systems. Nervous system in general, everything. Central nervous system, just my brain and my spine. Everything starts in peripheral with sensory neurons. Sensory neurons send information to your brain and spine where I will integrate it, and then motor will carry a response out depending on what you want to do. Skeletal muscles, somatic. Cardiac and smooth muscles, autonomic. But what do you want the automatically to do? Do you want them to go crazy? Sympathetic. Do you want to focus on digestion? Parasympathetic. And that right there, ladies and gentlemen, is the organization of your nervous system to run away from E.T. Okay, if you don't know me very well, I'm terrified of E.T. He haunts my nightmares. Okay, all right, let's go ahead and do some questions for you. Go ahead and do these questions really quick. See how well you do. The answers are on the next slide, and hopefully this was a good preview to the organization of the nervous system. And now we're going to start to take apart the brain and the nerves and talk about them piece by piece. So here comes the answers. Thanks for watching Burt's Basics. I'll see you on the flip side.